Good morning. Two more hands. We are going to mix it up. We have been working through hands where I open raise and then face a 3-bet and called. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to transition to facing a 2-bet preflop and then calling. This is a area of my game where I seem to be losing some money, so it could be calling with weak hands preflop, could be calling those calls maybe getting me into more difficult situations post flop. So we're going to focus on calling these 2 bets. So both of these hands, I'm on the button. Hand number 1, I get pocket threes, 10 NL game. We get 2 limps, and then we have a raise by a fairly tight player. His pre-flop raise is a little over 3%. He's in the mid position, so his raise first in right here is 7%, 5 out of 73. He really hasn't been open raising much, so we're going to give him a fairly tight range. This is almost the equivalent of a 3-betting range here. I think maybe something like that. He may have king queen too. Something that's like a little too much once we add our offsuit. So something like that. Maybe extend pocket pairs. I don't think we have a lot. Let's see here. 3-bet range is aces. Called 2 bets from the blinds with king queen suited. Called 3 bets out of position with pocket eights. Limp and called a raise ace 5. So if he's limping with ace 5 suited, I think he's probably limping with these smaller pocket pairs. 10 may or may not be in his open raising range. Same thing with ace 10, may or may not be in his open raising range. Just kind of, again, it's how we're working. So I think I'm going to leave it like this. 4.883%. I'm going to leave the ace queen offsuit, and I'm going to include a king queen suited here. So it folds to me, and then I have a choice. I can call, or I can raise, or I can fold. So right off the bat, you should see that I'm going to be behind his range. I'm right at 39%, almost 40%. I'm behind that range because he has aces through jacks, and even against 2 overcards, I'm not going to be a huge favorite against those. So, I think it would be reasonable to fold. If I 3-bet, we have to consider what is he going to call. His fold 3-bet after raise stat is 20%, which means that he's probably not going to be folding much. If I raise 3-bet, he may be folding something like maybe king queen suited and ace jack suited at that point. And that's not a huge, a huge thing. He could also like raise with those, and then call something like that. I just think, this stat's reflective of the fact that he's really not opening up with many hands. So I don't really think it would be wise to 3-bet here and build a bigger pot with pocket threes. So our other 2 options are to call or fold. I think calling's probably the better the better thing to do. We have to call 4 big bets, and there's 96 behind. I think we're getting good odds to try to set mine, but we do have to consider players behind us, because if we call here, we open up the possibility that we could be squeezed. So this player, 15-6-3, 3% 3-bet. I don't really think he is a likely candidate to squeeze. This guy is loose. He likes to call. He doesn't really raise a whole lot. His 3-bet stat's only 2. It's 1 out of 48. So I don't think he's going to be squeezing. What about these players? Well, they demonstrated they don't have strong hands just because they limped. So I doubt that they're going to come in with a limp raise. And if they do, hey, you know what? We just fold. The only time I've seen limp raises happen is when those players have had monster hands, so basically pocket aces. So I think calling is going to be good, and we're going to set mine. If we get one caller behind us, if we get two callers behind us, hey, that's okay because we're calling as a set mine. We're not calling based on equity. So the flop comes down 10 4 8, two spades, and you should see that this doesn't really hit his range at all. He's going to have all of these unpaired hands, so my pair is likely going to be good a sizable part of the time. And when we plug that in, you can see that my equity now has risen up to 46.5%. It's still not favored. It's still not favored, but my equity has improved. So, what do we think he's going to be? How do we think he's going to play his hands? If we look at his c-bet stats, he c-bets in position 60% of the time. He c-bets out of position 40% of the time. I think he's going to probably c-bet with hands that is either already made, so pocket pairs, so that would be the overpair, and c-bet with, let's say, flush draws. I'm not sure, or I don't think he's going to be betting here with just two overcards. I don't think that is his. I don't think that's his stats. That's not how he plays. So based on that, he's going to c-bet 43.8%. Does he c-bet? Yeah, he c-bets. He bets half pot. Against this range, I am way behind. So, what I should really do now is fold. And I don't. I actually call, which I think is problematic. I called to set mine. I didn't hit. It's just folding. He bet, not only that, but he bet, indicating that he likes his hand. I should just fold. Now, if I call, why would I want to call? I'm obviously not calling for equity. If I'm calling, I'm probably calling because I'm planning to bluff later on. And one of the ways in which I could bluff is that perhaps I can bluff a spade or a possible straight draw. Because, on the button, I'm going to be calling with a wider range. I could have Queen Jack. I could have Jack 9. I could have possibly 9 7. I could have those spades. So I think if I'm going to do that, I think it would be more reasonable for me to raise this bet, raise this C bet, and kind of start to represent having some sort of made hand or a draw. So represent that I have the 10. If he comes over the top, hey, we're done. We're gonna fold. I think he's committed. But if he just calls, kind of suggests that he might have the overpair, or he could have. Well, now I'm gonna say, if he comes over the top, he has the overpair. More than likely, he's going to try to blast out that spade. If he just calls, then I think it depends on what he does on the turn. If he shoves on the turn, he's got the overpair, and the turn's not the flush. If the non-flush comes and he checks, then he's probably on that flush draw himself. So we could plan accordingly. So I don't like this call at all. If I'm going to try to make a play at the pot, I feel like I should have raised this to start representing my hand. Turn was a 7 of diamonds, which helps that the plan to try to take the pot away. Now Jack 9 hits, and that diamond misses all of those spade draws that he may have had. So what would he continue betting with? I think he'd continue betting with overpairs, but I'm not quite sure he's going to continue betting his flush draws. I just don't think he's going to be continuing to bet those. So I think when he bets, he's overwhelmingly has this overpair, and at that point, I should probably just fold. He checks, which to me says, okay, he probably doesn't have an overpair, but is it all overpairs? Well, no, I'm gonna mark out aces and kings. I think those are going to be the most likely ones that would have checked. I think jacks and queens might go ahead and check. while ace and king bets. Um, or, based on this guy, because he is tight, he may have actually been scared that I now have the straight. So I'm going to leave all of these in as a check, even though I said he probably bet. Looking at his numbers, I think he's scared. I think he's just flat out scared that I hit. He's seeing monsters under the beds. That's his play style. This is like your classic rock. I'm gonna sit around, wait, and then if I think my hand could be beaten, I'm gonna shut down. I'm just gonna go into calling mode. So he checked and I bet, and I think that's okay because now I'm representing that I do have that straight. And he calls. And the question is, what is he going to call with? Well, we're going to call with all of the overpairs. I think we're going to call with all of the flush draws. Is he going to call with the gut shots? I don't think so. I think his numbers are too likely that he is just going to call with overpairs and that flush draw. And against that calling range, I'm way behind, which means the only way I can win now is to spike a 3 or to bluff him out. Hope the flush draw misses, and then I could get 14% folds, maybe, or to have like some great hand like a 9. I think a 9 would be absolutely fantastic. A jack, a 9, or a 6 would be fantastic because that kind of represent that hey, I can easily have the straight, and that could get the overpairs to fold at that point. 10 came, not the greatest, but at this point I've kind of played it like I have that 10. So let's think about what his hands are going to be. I think he's just going to check. He's going to check his entire range here, and he did do that. So now it comes to us. If I bet, what is he going to call with? I think I don't know if he's going to call with jacks, queens, kings, and aces. I do think aces, and I think kings. I think those two hands, players just get stubborn, and they always want to call with him no matter what. They're afraid to give it up. So let's say if I bet he's only going to call with those, and that means he's calling, 43% of the time. He's folding 55% of the time. This could be a situation where I could make a play, generate some folds, and especially get the folds from two hands that beat my pocket threes. So bluffing. I made a pot size bet. I'm risking 53 to win. The 53 that's in the pot. So how much do I need him to fold to make this a auto profit situation? So remember, it's risk divided by risk plus reward. So I need him to fold 50% of the time. I have him folding more than 50% of the time. If he folds those jacks and queens. So that was a play that I made. He calls, and once he calls, I know I'm beat, and he has queen. So my assumptions were wrong, and that led me to the wrong play. Going back to this hand, if he is going to call with all of his overpairs, then since he called with queens, he's likely calling with jacks, and because of that, he's only going to be folding 15% of the time. This is a spot where I don't think now that river bluff is very good at all. So we can say, okay, this is a tight player. He's always going to call with overpairs, and make a mental note that perhaps all of players of this type would probably call with the overpair. I do think if a jack, a 6, or a 9 comes, that I could successfully make this play, but with the 10, I just don't know. I don't think this is going to work. So we missed this hand because our assumption was wrong. We didn't think he would call with jacks or queens because he is so tight, and he might be scared of that 10 hitting. And again, you can ask, why would he have just checked? I mean, why not just continue betting And I think he checked because he got scared of that straight. So, all right, this is hand number one. Let me pause this and get hand number two ready. Hand number two has me on the button. I have king queen offsuit, and I have an early position raise to 2.8 big blind, so not even a 3 big blind, but so what do we know about this player? This player has played 32 hands. Right now he's 9-6, so 9% VPIP, 6% pre-flop raise, 0% 3-bet. In his, so this would be, I guess, technically middle position. So raise first in, 0 out of 3, so this will make 1 out of 4. We really don't know much about this player. So this is a 25 NL game. Let's set up a hand, open raising range, something like that. We don't know. We don't know if he's going to open raise with all of his low pocket pairs. We don't know if he's going to raise with all of his suited aces. We don't know if he's going to throw in some of these ace 2 to ace 5 suited hands. We don't know if he's doing his small pocket pairs. We don't even know how much of these suited connectors he's going to do, or even how many of offsuit hands he's going to do. Some people consider the offsuit hands just as strong as suited, and they'll open with them at the same frequency. So it's tough. I think this is okay. It's 10% VPIP, 10% opening range in this spot. Maybe a little conservative, but we'll see. So that's his opening range. King Queen. I have King of Heart, Queen of Club. I'm going to be at 40% here. I'm behind all of his pocket pairs right now, and I'm going to be dominated by his ace-king hands and his ace-queen hand. So I'm behind. I think we could 3-bet here. I think 3-betting will likely fold out both of these players, both of the blinds, even though I don't have a whole lot of information on these players. They seem to be tight, 16-9 and then 9-9. So if I 3-bet, I think I'm going to definitely get a heads up. Against an unknown, I don't know if that's good. I think it might be better just to go ahead, see a flop, call, see a flop, and proceed from there. I can call with less than 50% equity because I'm in position. And that's an important thing to realize. Being in position gives us so much of an advantage over the out-of-position player that we can win hands that we really shouldn't have won. So I don't really mind my call, especially with King-Queen offsuit. So I called, both blinds folded, and we see a flop. And the flop is Queen of Hearts, 9 of Spades, 8 of Diamonds. All right, so out of that, I have top pair with second kicker. You can see my equity is only 34%. The question is, oops, take that off. My equity is 57%. Why is that? Well, he has, when I have the queen, the king-queen, we basically block ace-queen of clubs. All right. We block the king-queen of hearts. And we block some of these offsuit ace-queen hands. We block ace-queen no matter what. So we reduce the number of combos of those. If we look at the straight, he only hits the straight with Jack 10. We're ahead of the 10s and jacks that are out there. Obviously, his queens just hit trips, his 9s and 8s hit trips, and we're ahead of 6-7. We're also ahead of the 7-8s and the 10-9s. So we're ahead of quite a bit of his range. So question is, how are we going to play this? With limited information, we're gonna have to make a choice as to whether we're gonna call a c bet if he bets or raise that c bet. If he checks to us, we're gonna have to make a decision: are we going to check behind or are we going to just raise? I'm gonna assume that he's going to bet. I mean, he has a big stack, 200 big blinds. Um, he could have gotten lucky to win that, or it could be a somewhat decent player. So I'm going to assume he's going to bet at this flop. And the question then becomes, should I call this or should I raise it? I think fold's out of the question. I've got top pair, second kicker. So calling seems to be reasonable. But what happens if we raise? Well, let's go check out what hands we think he's going to bet with. Um, I'm going to say he's going to bet top pair, pocket pair below top pair. I think maybe even just all the pairs he's going to bet, see where he's at. I think his gut shots, he'll bet. We'll include the 2 card backdoor flush draw. Which ones are those? Those are, I think the only hands that get added would be ace king, I think. Because we're going to include the gut shots. He'll bet those gut shots. So when we include those, we've got 89%, 90% of the time he's going to be betting. Just the regular ace high hands, I think he might give up on. So ace jack, ace 10, but those are fall under the gut shot, so we capture those. Ace king is the one that will get dropped, and it would be the ace king clubs. So against this range, the c betting range, we're still ahead, so I think we can call. If we raise, what do we think he's going to call with? So right now we are at, we're going to say 89.9%. That's we need to remember that. If we raise, I think he's going to probably get rid of his weak pair, his middle pair. He's going to continue with the pocket pair below top pair because he has a gut shot. I think his top pair is going to call. His over pair may raise. Actually, no, he'll probably just call. He's going to be aware that I may have 10 jack. 2 pair, set straights. All that's going to call. I think probably all of the gut shots would call. Ace jack and ace 10, maybe not. So let's get rid of ace jack, ace 10. I mean, for the raise, for one bet, actually, we're going to leave that in because, again, for this player, it's not like this raise is going to be huge. If I raise, it's probably going to be a raise to about 15 or so. About a pot size raise, and he would have to call 12 big blinds. So I think he's going to probably call with all those gut shots. 2 card backdoor flushes, though, I think he'll probably just fold those. So he's continuing with 72.7% of his range. So we started with 89.9%. So if that's what he's continuing, and that's what we started with, he's basically going to continue 81% of the time. And when we think about my hand, how could I, when he calls that 81% of the time, what's going to be our plan for the rest of the hand? Well, if a 7 comes, I think we're still going to get calls. I think it's 7, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4. I'm sorry, a 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2 would be good for our hand. I think we can continue betting. I think a 10 or a jack is going to be questionable. I think a 10 or a jack we could probably continue betting. And that would likely generate folds from the over pairs and maybe even ace queen. But I think what we're doing is increasing variance when we make this raise. So I think calling works okay. which is what I did because I think he's betting with a wide range of hands, and we're trying to keep the pot small because we do have a top pair type hand. It's just not. I think the board has to be a little bit different. Uh, Maybe two spades, two diamonds, two hearts. Maybe it needs to be two suited in order for the raise to be a little bit better. Maybe I need to have something like a queen jack. Maybe a gut shot to go with that. I think I need something else to fall back on. So I just call, and then the three of diamonds comes, which I don't think is it. I don't think the three of diamonds changes who's ahead at this moment. So he checks to me, and that's kind of interesting because I think when he checks, I think that gets rid of. I think he can check his pocket pair below top pair, his middle pair, weak pair, his flush draws. I think he's checking all of that. Uh, I kind of think he still bets his straight and his sets. I think he still bets them small. There's a possibility that he's going to check raise with them. Maybe even the two pair, he's going to check raise. His over pair, though, I think he would probably still bet. So let's take those out and say pocket pair below, flush draws. The top pair hand, let's add in queen jack to that hand and say he'll check queen jack, but he would have bet king queen and ace queen. And the over pairs we'll leave those out. All right, so against that checking range, we're actually doing pretty good. So I think this is a spot where we can probably bet. We should probably bet. We're betting for value because the last thing we want to have happen is to check and then something like a 10 or a jack comes, giving him a straight. So I bet 10.4 big blinds. Is that size appropriately? I could have probably bet pot a little bit larger, but it's not a small bet. We're betting an amount that I think we will get folds, especially get folds from some of our gut shots. I'm going to leave these gut shots in there. I think all of those hands were hands that we're going to call anyway, so our equity actually went up. That's why I think it's good. We're going to have to bet to protect. Bet to if he's going to call, let's build up the pot. Let's get more money in on those draws that he calls with. So he does call, and then five of hearts comes. And at this point, I think now it's probably best just to go ahead and check behind if he checks. We've got a showdown value hand. I think the only hands he's going to call with are going to be hands that ultimately beat us. And at this point, when we look at top pair type hands, he could have the ace, queen, king, queen, queen, jack in there. I'm not sure why they would be. Because they were part of the flush draw. Let's take that flush draw out. So now five of hearts. I think the only top pair hand he'll have is that queen jack. I think he'll have pocket pair below top pair. We want him to call those hands. And if I bet, I just don't know if he would. So he checks. I check behind, which I think is good. I've got some showdown value hand, and he shows ace queen. And shows ace queen of diamonds, actually. So let's go back and look back here. I took that flush draw out. So if he had the flush draw, then now that includes the top pair hands too. So ace queen. And maybe his check was because he had the ace queen of diamonds. Maybe he didn't want to bet and then be faced with a big raise. And, lose. Lose a big pot. So I don't know. We didn't have it in there. I think I think it's okay. I mean, I guess from his point of view, he has top pair, top kicker on a board that is going to hit me. I mean, I think 8-9 and 9-10 jacks in my range. Pocket eights, pocket nines. Those are all in my range. I guess once I called the flop, he's just slowing down to be conservative. Um, and I think that might, perhaps that may be a GTO type strategy. Slow it down. Your hand's not really worth three streets of value, so check it to be conservative so that you don't get, you don't lose a big pot. All right, so those are two hands. I didn't really get either of those hands. My assumptions were wrong. I assumed he would have continued betting with that ace queen. I think I probably would have, because I would have thought that if a diamond comes, I can fire out another street uh, and probably get called by king queen and king jack. Uh, Whereas here, you know, he checked that turn, I bet, and then I checked behind on the river. All he got was that turn bet. I would have called another bet on the turn, uh, and probably another small bet on the river, uh, with top pair second kicker. So, all right. So these were two hands. Hope you enjoyed them. Look tomorrow for two additional hands.